right, we can go ahead and get started.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, and everyone in our listening and viewing audience. Today, we are going to be doing our quarterly finance briefings, and today we will be reviewing the general fund and both of our major enterprise funds, aviation and water. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Madam Abby so that she can introduce her staff who will walk us through this.
Good evening, and I am going to borrow your phone. All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Like the Deputy City Manager mentioned, we are going to provide you with a first quarter update on our financials for all three funds, starting with the general fund. And I am going to start. Here with us. My technical difficulty. Okay, that is not working, so all right, so we're gonna go straight to the statement. And let me make it slightly bigger so we can see. All right, starting with the statement, we'll go over and talk through some of the highlights before we really dive deeper into the data set in the rest of the presentation. As you can see, all revenues have increased by 3.3% or $1.7 million when we compare to 2024 for the first 3 months. Compared to the budget, revenues were 4.3% or $2.3 million lower. Our largest source, which is income tax, as you know, saw a slight increase year over year. Compared to 2024, income tax increased by 0.9% or nearly $350,000. And we'll dive deeper into the income tax in the next slide. The largest increase is in the local government fund category by $900,000. As you know, the city did not receive revenue in the local government fund starting from August of 2023 to August of 2024. And this was largely because of, not largely, this was due to the reduction that was contributed by the traffic enforcement camera revenue that was collected from July of 2019 to June of 2023. Now that we've met the prior year liability, starting in 2025, well, actually starting at the end of 2024, we started to receive the revenue. But for 2025, we are seeing that $0 in 2024 because we didn't see any revenue in the beginning of 2024 last year. The second largest increase is in the property taxes and other taxes category. It is nearly $500,000, and that's due to the county's triennial update of property values in 2023. After receiving the actual property taxes in 2024, the county has adjusted our monthly advance amounts. And that's why we're really seeing that increase in the property taxes. Not necessarily because property values have gone up by that much, just because of the treatment of our advance payment. That's why we're seeing that 14.9% increase. The largest decrease is in the licenses and permit category, and this is largely due to the lower construction permit revenue and mechanical permits, specifically electrical permits and heating permits. On budgetary basis, total revenues were 4.3% or $2.3 million lower than the forecast. And compared to year over year, 6 of the 10 revenue categories have performed better than same time last year. Now, on the expenditures side.
Mayor, excuse me.
Yes.
May I close the
Turn your mic on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Patel Jones, thank you. The decrease in the licenses and permits, you said that we're seeing a decrease in the permits for electrical and,
Yeah, the mechanical permits are seeing a decrease, specifically electrical and heating. But we're also seeing a decrease in the construction permits.
is it a rationale or are people just not pulling the permits or is it just because of the?
We'll go over more into the
Okay, that's
detail in we do have a specific slide for that, so we'll go over more.
Okay, thank you.
So, as far as the expenditure goes, expenditures were under budget, which is a favorable variance by $807,500 or 1.1%, and we're $6.3 million above the 2024. Personnel costs were $1 million under budget, but $2.9 million or 7.5% higher than 2024. In addition to the annual wage growth, timing of the police recruit class, and police contractual wage adjustment that became effective at the end of last year are largely driving this year-over-year increase in the personnel cost. Contracts and materials and other uses had a favorable budget variance of $1.7 million, but were $227,500 higher than 2024. And this was largely contributed by the higher supplies and material cost, taxes, and the increases were slightly offset by the timing of payment to the regional dispatch center and professional services cost. With the renewal of Your Dollars, Your Neighborhood, investments have increased by $3.2 million from $8.6 million to $11.7 million specifically for the Your Dollars, Your Neighborhood program. And that's why really we're seeing that 32% increase in the issue 9/6 new services investment line. At the end of first quarter of 2025, sources exceeded uses by $22.7 million, and this is largely due to the early funding of investments. We talk about this every year. We do provide the early funding of investments so that we can start to encumber the funds for the capital projects and investment that we have planned for the year. All right, next we will income tax specifically. So overall, income tax law saw a slight increase of 0.3% or nearly $350,000 compared to the first 3 months of 2024. And as you can see in the bar chart in the top right-hand corner, the fluctuation between January and February is due to the number of Fridays. There were 5 Fridays in both January of 2024 and February of 2025. By March, the calendar has normalized and we saw the same number of Fridays as the prior year. Withholding taxes continued the upward trend with year-over-year increase of 3.5% or $1.2 million. Conversely, business profits saw a 25.7% decline compared to March of 2024. Months of January and March saw a decline of 34.6% and 26.5% respectively. The decline was slightly offset by a small increase in February. The collections from individuals increased by $63,500 or 7.1%. This is reversing the trend that we saw in the prior year when we saw a 12.6% decline in individual collections. And lastly, refunds grew by $309,200 or 26.62%, contributing to the modest increase in the net collections as they offset some gains in the gross revenue. Now I'm going to hand it over to Christina. Christina is one of our newest staff member, and she is going to present the revenues and expenditures.
So moving on to property taxes and other taxes, compared to the first quarter of 2024, property taxes and other taxes revenues increased by $487,100 or 14.9%. Real estate tax growth was driven, as Abby said, by higher advance payments from Montgomery County based on the 2024 actuals because of the triennial property value update in 2023. As of March, revenue from public utility tax has not been realized. The payment is expected in April. Property tax revenue was partially offset by the continued elimination of the hotel lodging tax revenues. And we'll take a look at EMS fees. Revenues have increased by $233,600 or 14.5% compared to the first quarter of 2024. The primary driver of this is an increase of 77% in the Medicaid rate, which has a notable impact because Medicaid accounts for nearly half of EMS billable transports annually. Interestingly, the overall incident volume, EMS incident volume was up while the number of billable EMS transports dipped slightly, 1.6% year over year. Moving on to license and permits. As Abby mentioned, we saw a significant decline in the first quarter. The revenue in this category dropped by 36.1%, or about $368,300. This decline is largely tied to a sharp reduction in the total valuations of the building and construction permits. While the number of these permits has only decreased by less than 1%, the valuation of these permits has decreased by about 52%.
Commissioner Fairchild, does that answer your question?
Turner-Sloss.
I mean, excuse me. I was looking right at you. Turner-Sloss.
Yes.
And then we also saw a decrease in mechanical permits, and this includes areas like heating and electrical work. Now looking at the expenditure side, we'll start with personnel. Personnel expenses were up 7.5%, or about $2.9 million in comparison to Q1 of 2024. Civilian wages grew 9.8% over 2024 due to budgeted wage inflation, the filling of positions, and the timing of a police recruit class. The 2025 police recruit class started in November of 2024, whereas the 2024 recruit class started in March of 2024. Sworn wages increased $1.1 million, in part due to inflation, but primarily because of wage increases for 2024 and 2025 wage increases from the labor contract that was effective late 2024. Additionally, fringes were up 8.1%, and civilian overtime was down from last year. Moving on to contracts and materials, we've seen an increase of $227,500 or 1.9% since 2024. This is mainly due to the management and public service contracts that were down due to the timing of the first quarter payment to the regional dispatch center payment. Last year, we made a payment in March, whereas this year the payment was made in April. Additionally, supplies and materials costs are 42.3% higher in 2025 due to inflationary cost increases in the replacement of end-of-life computers for the police department. This was a project that we have been budgeting for the past year and a half or so, and those costs just became effective. Okay. And also taxes are 71.8% higher in 2025 due to higher real estate taxes paid to the Miami Conservancy District for city-owned parcels. And this is due to the increase of existing assessment for maintenance and flood protection systems, as well as the new assessment for capital improvements.
All right, as for the big picture for revenue, income tax continues to comprise most of the general fund revenue. at 71.1% of 2025's total revenue. Property taxes, waste collection, EMS fees, and other charges for services comprises the 22.2% of the remaining general fund revenue. Now, there is still 6.7% left. This 6.7% comes from the remaining 5 categories. There are a total of 10 revenue categories. Total revenue has grown 3.7 million since 2021. Income tax were 6.5% higher than 2021, or 2.3 million. All other revenue sources were 11.1% higher than 2021, or 1.5 million. Income tax growth has largely been driven by the pandemic-related stimulus that we've seen in the recent past few years. We've also seen a big jump in our business profits tax, and because of that, we're seeing that large growth in income tax when we compare ourselves to 2021. For the EMS billable transports, we are seeing a growing number of EMS billable transports, resulting in an over $800,000 or 77.8% increase in EMS revenue since 2021. And then we've been talking about the local government fund for the past few years. Local government fund saw an increase of over $900,000 this year, and that's why we're seeing that increase this year when we compare ourselves to 2021. Fines and forfeits revenue climbed 237.7% from 2021. This is largely due to the posting of photo enforcement camera revenue. The revenue was deposited into a special projects fund prior to 2025, but starting in 2025, the revenue is deposited into the general fund, and that's why we're seeing that big increase in the fines and forfeits category. As far as the big picture goes for expenditure trends from 2021 through 2025, personnel costs have comprised between 75.6% to 78.7% of total cost, and this is exclusive of the investments. Compared to 2021, personnel costs have climbed 36.8%, or nearly 37% during the 5-year period. And this is largely due to the annual line movement and merit increases. Also, the lump sum payments. You may recall we had lump sum payments in 2022 and 2023. And we're also seeing a higher sworn overtime due to vacancies for the last few years. So the compounded annual growth rate in personnel cost is 8.2%. On the contracts and materials side, exclusive of other uses, contracts and materials have grown almost 39% since 2021. Post-pandemic inflationary cost increases have continued to impact the organization, with contracts and material costs growing more significantly in 2023 and 2024 as supply chain delays have eased in the last few years. The largest 5-year expenditure increase has been in payments to internal service funds, and this is related to the fleet rate increases that we've done in the last 2 cycles and the repairs for the aging fleet. And then, as Christina mentioned, we are also seeing that large increase in taxes because of our increased allocation to the Miami Conservancy District for the assessment. All right, so this is our department compliance. As of first quarter, total general fund expenditures and transfers account for 31.3% of our annual budget. Most departments are performing within the expected budget variance, with the exception of HR, IT, Public Works, and Issue 9 investments and income tax. All 3 departments, including HR, IT, and Public Works, are experiencing the higher budget variance due to encumbrances, which are for annual contracts requiring commitment of fund earlier in the year. And then higher budget variance for Your Dollars, Your Neighborhood, and income tax is largely due to the earlier funding of investments.
What was those, excuse me,
Go ahead.
what were those 3 departments, HR?
HR, IT, and Public Works.
and Public Works.
Those are the three departments that are highlighted in the red.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so as for our Dayton Recovery Plan update, as you can see, out of the total 60 projects, 56 projects has contracts been approved by you all. To date, total awarded contracts are $84.7 million, and of that, $36.9 million has been spent on investments largely in the community. And we also have a more detailed breakdown of the Dayton Recovery Plan by project categories. So as you can see, Dayton Community and Small Business Recovery received a total allocation of slightly over $7 million. Of that, so far they've spent $4.7 million or $4.6 million, which accounts for 66.2% of their total allocation. For catalyzing economic recovery, the allocation was $10.8 million. Of that, $7 million has been spent so far, which is 65.1% of the total allocation. For city projects, the facilities improvements and the fire and police station improvements received a $21.5 million allocation. Of that, we've spent $3.8 million, which is 17.8% of the total allocation. And improving neighborhood, which is our largest bucket, has a total allocation of $55 million. They've spent $17.8 million, or nearly $18 million of that $55 million allocation, which is 32.4% of the total allocation. And then lastly, supporting Black and Brown businesses has an allocation of $7.7 million. Of that, we spent $3.6 million, which is 47.1%. So as you can see, in totality, we've spent 36.2% of our $102 million allocation for the BRP. All right, so we also wanted to highlight some of our Dayton Recovery Plan projects. Completed projects, these are not all completed projects. These projects have been completed in the recent times. So we wanted to take this time to highlight some of these projects. On the top right-hand corner, you see the West 3rd Street Housing Project, which is also called the Sims Development Corporation Project. The total allocation for this project was $980,000. And the funding supported the redevelopment of 1 acre site in the right downtown neighborhood, including site preparation activities such as engineering, land planning, and installation of utilities to prepare the area for future development. Below that, we see the RV with the Papa Preschool logo. That is a Papa Preschool project. The total allocation for this project was $250,000, and the funding supported the purchase and retrofitting of 1 Class C RV to be used for the Papa Preschool program. Also on the left-hand side, we have the NCCJ trailer. This is the NCCJ Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Project. The total allocation for this project was almost $41,000, and the funding supported the purchase of a trailer. As you can see, it's a beautiful trailer. We did a site visit, and they were very excited about using this trailer for their outdoor activities. They've also purchased the tent, outdoor chairs, and other equipment that are needed for hosting the outdoor gatherings, as well as informational material and other technology, including iPads, projectors, to support the organization's effort to promote mental well-being and suicide prevention. And then lastly, we have the micro grant program, also called the Urban League. The total allocation for this project was $1.5 million, and the funding helped support women and minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs through the issuance of micro grant funds, and supported the organization in the building out of their space at the arcade. To date, $860,000 in grants have been awarded to local businesses. So as you can see, this project is still underway. However, they received all of it from us. All right, and lastly, for the Dayton Recovery Plan, these are the remaining projects. As you can see on the pie chart, the total allocation for the DRP is $102 million. Of that, 80% of the projects are in progress, 13% have been completed, and only 7% haven't started. The 7% includes the 4 projects totaling $2.4 million. One of the project is Longfellow Midtown, which has a $1.5 million allocation. It's a housing project. We are working with the grantee on moving the project forward. The other project is the pool house at Fairview. That project is nearly $600,000. And this specific project requires a completion of certain aspect of the spray park. And so once the spray park project is complete, this project will move forward. We also have, HRC has a project to purchase compliance software to support the city's efforts to engage diverse businesses and comply with the prevailing wage requirement. That project is $150,000. And then lastly, we have safe and secure housing, which is $200,000. The first contract for this project is expected to come before you in April-May timeframe, and we expect to start spending on that in quarter 2 this year. All right, so here is our employment chart, and this is seasonally adjusted data. As you can see, from cycle peak in February of 2020 to April, the region lost 60,900 jobs, or 15.5% of the jobs. 63,100 jobs have been added back since April 2020 and are 2,600 jobs higher than the February peak, with new peak taking place in December 2024, as you can see in that chart at the right here. This is when we hit the peak, new peak. And for the first 3 months, we've lost some, we've gained some, but as you can see, we're continuing to see the higher employment than what we saw pre-pandemic. Just post-pandemic. During the 1-year span, a little more than 8,000 jobs were added back. If you were to look at the job growth from March of 2023 to March of 2024, we've added 8,000 jobs in that. All right, so these numbers won't neatly align with the numbers that we saw on the previous slide because these are not seasonally adjusted. As the first quarter of 2025, the region has gained 6,500 jobs compared to the pre-pandemic peak of February 2020. All but 3 industries saw job growth, with trade, transportation and utilities, and education/health seeing the largest growth, followed by construction. As for our economic indicators, the very first chart that you see on here shows the employment growth and compares between Dayton MSA and Ohio. The Dayton region gained ground in the first quarter of 2025, with employment levels rising by 53,100 jobs since March of 2024. Compared to the peak in February of 2020, the state has outpaced regional growth, registering 1.5% growth, as opposed to Dayton registering 0.7% growth for the same time. The good news story here is that we've recovered the lost jobs and have actually added jobs since that job loss that we experienced post-pandemic or pre-pandemic. As for the job growth compared to the state, you can see in this chart, Dayton was not keeping pace with the state at the end of last year. We were lower than where state was. But for the first 3 months of 2025, the job growth for Dayton is in line with the state job growth. The second chart, or the table next to the employment growth, is the unemployment table showing the data for state of Ohio, Montgomery County, and Dayton specifically. This data is reported by the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services. The unemployment rate for Dayton has increased to 6.6% compared to 5.1% in March of 2024. However, compared to February of 2025, the unemployment rate has gone down by 1 percentage point. So very small decrease, but it has gone down slightly in just one month change. The chart on the left-hand corner shows the Midwest region CPI. CPI for all items was 2.7% higher than March of 2024. The Federal Reserve has been trying to bring the CPI down to around 2%. It's slightly over that 2% mark at 2.7%. Over the year, prices for food rose 2.8% and energy decreased by 3.2%, and this is largely due to the lower prices for gasoline. So because of that increase and decrease, we saw that 2.7% growth in CPI. When we take out food and energy, for all other items, CPI grew 3.3% for the same time. And then lastly, we have the chart showing the real GDP, the percent change from quarter to quarter. And as you can see, quarter four, the real GDP did decrease to 2.4% from 3.1% in quarter three of 2024. The Federal Reserve estimates the real GDP to decline by 2.7% in the first quarter of 2025. And so as you can see, aside from employment, the unemployment rate, the higher unemployment rate, the CPI, and the slowdown of the real GDP, all of these things are pointing towards an economy that's slowing down. All right, so to conclude the general fund's quarter one results, revenues were up slightly during the first quarter of 2025. Revenues increased by 1.7 million or 3.3% compared to the same time last year. And as we talked about, the increase is largely attributed to the higher property and other taxes and the increase in local government fund revenue. Despite the higher revenues that we saw in year-over-year increases, revenues were 2.3 million or 4.3% lower than the forecast, and this is due to the higher projected revenues for the year. Personnel cost increased by 7.5%, and as we talked about, this is largely driven by those contractual wage increases for the police department that took place at the end of last year, and also the timing of the recruit class for the police department. Contracts and material did not see a huge increase year over year. For the first 3 months, contracts and material were up 1.9%, and that's just departments continuing their 2025 expenditures. As of first quarter of 2025, uses exceeded sources by 22.7 million. This is primarily due to the personnel cost increases and early funding of investment. And as we talked about, we did increase our allocation for Your Dollars, Your Neighborhood program starting in 2025. So we're also seeing that increase year over year. These early investments do allow us to make sure that we have timely bidding and project starts for the year that we budgeted for. Questions?
Okay. Questions? Commissioners?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Patel-Jones. Thank you, I'm sorry,
Christina.
Ms. Christina. Thank you, and welcome aboard. I know I'm a year late, but welcome aboard. Just a couple of questions. So I just want to thank you and your entire staff for including for all the work that you all do and for including the detailed information in regards to the DRP. Can we please have some more detail for chart 14? Like, can you give us some of the specifics? This is the community organization. Like, I just.
Which slide are you referring to?
Sure, chart 14.
Page
14.
Chart 14. Yes.
Okay. And what's your question? I'm sorry.
More so in regards to improving neighborhoods, community organization. Like, if you can drill down on some of those details for a number of the categories, like the parks, the recreation center upgrades. I imagine that was like the Northwest Teen Center, or if you can just give us some of
So-
those details.
Those details you can drill down into on that link.
Okay.
So when you go into the dashboard, it gives the overall category description.
Mhm.
It'll also highlight some of the completed projects out of each category, but you can also then drill down into each category and see the sub-awards that were given
Okay.
and the progress that those are making as well. So if you've got something specific, we can pull it, but if you just want to kind of peruse what's been going on at the detailed level, that link will get you there for sure, and give you as much detail as
Okay.
your heart can hold, okay?
Okay, great, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I really appreciate it. And then a final question. So we saw over the state the increase in construction, right? But then we also noted like, and I understand that we can't compare the two with the state and the city, but we also saw a decrease in our licenses and permits in the city at the city level.
So license and permits, if you think about it, there's two main categories. There's the mechanical permits and then
Right.
there is the construction permits.
Right.
The construction permits, when we pulled the data, we saw construction permits, let me back up, are based on the valuation of project.
Okay.
And so the smaller project, meaning you're gonna get smaller amount of construction permits because it's based on percentage of that valuation of the project. What we saw when we downloaded the data is in 2025, we have less projects that have bigger dollar amounts
Okay,
as opposed to the prior years.
okay,
And that's what's driving the decrease in construction permit revenue.
thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Fairchild.
Yeah, you touched on this on the last slide, but I was curious, looking on page 3 at the issue 9-6 line, down there in the expenditures. Does that include the preschool promise? And it looks like we pre-funded, I think that was your last slide. We've pre-funded all the projects within the city. Does this line include preschool promise as well?
Yeah, this includes all four categories of issue 9, issue 6 funding, which includes preschool promise, parks upgrade, vacant lot mowing, and housing and resurfacing.
And we also have equipment in there too, right? A
There's
6th category around public works.
Yeah.
Capital improvements.
I want to be clear on pre-funded. We made the transfer so that as contracts are available, funding is present in those individual funds. We have not advanced anyone any money.
Okay.
We just wanted to make sure that the dollars, the budget authority was in each specific category's account so that as we do those contracts, funding is separate, has been separated out of the big general pot.
Sure. Is an accounting
Yes.
process.
Yes.
I'm good.
Okay, you're good. One question, you mentioned, I guess, probably at the end, about the economy slowing down. Is that because of federal activity or state or local?
Talking to, when we met with our bond counsel, or not the bond counsel, but
Our underwriter.
investment underwriter, it was also, they also communicated that because of the tariffs conversation that are happening in the economy, and, we've been hearing in the news, investors are losing confidence. And so because of that, I think we're seeing that slowdown of the economy where we're seeing the GDP not grow as much as it has grown in the past.
I'll tell you what's disheartening is looking at the chart on 17 with the employment. We finally hit the peak, and we know that a recession is likely in the. You can get ahead. You can get ahead. Finally come back and.
Here we go, Jack.
Here we go.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. That's the general fund. We'll now call water forward, please.
I'm gonna have to take off in a couple of minutes, not because of anything you said. Yes, and notes.
And it's at the bottom.
The bottom?
The bottom is there. First one.
Okay, I'm gonna start with everyone here because that's usually the first problem.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so hello, my name is Keisha Kenny. I'm Division Manager for Water Supply and Treatment. I'm here to talk about the first quarter performance of the water fund. And now we'll go ahead and start with our first overview slide. And we're looking at the water fund here. I want to say before I go into too much detail, we performed as expected on both the water and the sanitary fund. And I'll go into those details as we move along. So for starters, the water fund performed higher than expected. And this is both for our city customers, but also our outside jurisdictions. And what happened with that, that's above our budget, but also above for both city customers and our outside customers. We also had increases in our lime cells, which that's incorporating a lot of an increase there as well. When we're looking at expenditures, those were up too, and that's about 13.6%. And this is comparing it to quarter one of 2024. Some of the things to highlight there is that our personnel costs were up. Also, our contracts and materials were down, but that's due to I'm sorry. No worries, I can do that. That's probably helpful.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. We also have where our capital improvement transfers were also up, but this wasn't actually due to increased spending. This is with us going ahead and making the capital transfers in first quarter of 2025 that we did not do in first quarter of 2024. As we were going through and working on a management program to make sure we're properly accounting for our funds in our capital improvement plans. For the water fund, even though we did do our capital improvement transfers for first quarter, we did not use our cash reserves. So now as we look over the water revenues again, which I spoke about on our overview slide, as you can see that we're up as projected for both our city customers and our other jurisdictions. And this includes a rate increase for our city customers of about 9%. And if you look at our other jurisdictions, we're up here as well, about 8.8%. But this includes a rate increase, but we also had increased revenue as well for our other jurisdictions, and this includes again, as I said, for our lime cells, those were up, but that was up about 13. Part of that includes a 13% increase, which is something that we do every year. We compare what we do compared to the producer price index, and then we'll do our increases based upon that. We also had some increased tonnage that we sold, and that's a part of the increases you see with our other charges. Now, when you're looking at our other revenues, this is more of an indirect cost that we have, where we have additional staffing that you saw, that we fill positions on the water side of the house, which is how they are paid. And then you have the sanitary and storm fund are billed for whatever services that those employees perform out of the water fund, and that is charged to the sanitary and storm fund. So that's more of an accounting issue and making sure that we're separating water and sanitary. So as we go over to our expenditures, those are up as well. Part of this is due to our personnel costs being up, and this is about 7.7%. And this is due to some line movements. We also managed to fill about 3 positions on the water side, but we also had increase in overtime cost. As you know, most of the water plants are 24 hours a day, so we do have to cover those. But As you go over to contracts and materials, those were down. One part of the reason why this is down is due to AES and IGS asking us to suspend paying some of our invoices while they work on the billing system. But we feel this will probably resume in Q2 of 2025, and then everything will go back to normal. When you're looking at our other charges, these were up. So at water supply and treatment, there were some security upgrades, some additional fencing, some cameras, and then you also had some of our sludge disposal was up. But this was just due to a billing issue where we received a bill in late 2024, but it wasn't accounted for until 2025. So that concludes the water side. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about the sanitary side. So as we're over here on the sanitary side, again, revenues were up on the sanitary side. And this was above budget forecast, and this was for both city customers and other jurisdictions. Our other charges were up as well. Well, other charges were down, but we had some charges that were up that are accounted for in that one, but we also have some that were high in that one as well. And I'll go into the details when we get to the other slide. When we're looking at our expenditures on the sanitary side, those were up as well, and that was about $2 million. And this was due to the capital transfers that we discussed on the water side. We also did this on the sanitary side. We also had our contracts and materials that were up as compared to Q1 of 2024. But this was offset by our personnel costs being down by about 0.1%. Again, we did the capital transfers as discussed, and then we also did not use our cash reserves, again, as this was just us making sure we were doing our accounting properly on our capital transfers. So I'll go into a little bit more details now on our actual revenues. So again, sanitary revenues were up. This includes an increase. This includes our inflationary increase of about 5%. For both city customers and other jurisdictions, but we also had with other jurisdictions, we had some increased revenue, and we also had some bill timing that was more favorable for the city. When you look at our other charges for services, this was down, and again, this was because we had some customers on our industrial side where the suspended solids were down as compared to Q1 of 2024, but then we had some increased biological oxygen demand, which we charged for, which was a difference between Q1 and Q of 2024 as compared to Q1 of 2025. As we move over to the expenditures, these were up as well, but some of this increase was offset by some of the personnel costs. So as you can see, this is only up by about 0.1%, and this is due to there being a decrease in positions by about 2 over first quarter 2024 as compared to 2025. But again, we did have increased overtime costs because our wastewater facility does run 24 hours a day. So this is covering those vacancies. As we look at our contracts and materials, these were up about 5.5%. And this is due to some bill timing with our sludge disposal. Also, some of our supplies and materials were up, and this is because we completed a project where we got some of our truck mounts in for some of our field staff, which in the end will end up saving us money as we do not lose our radios in holes or they get damaged as people are working. We also had some additional projects that had been delayed that we finally got those items in. And this includes pumps and whatnot for our Westbrook pump station, but also some seals and bearings, and we were able to complete some projects. Similar to what you saw on the water side, these expenditures were offset by what happened with our utilities, where we had to hold off on paying these bills while we waited for IGS and AES to tell us it's okay to pay those invoices. So to summarize the first quarter for the water department of both the water and sanitary fund, we're up as compared to first quarter of 2024. This is for both our city customers and other jurisdictions, and this includes rate increases along with some other charges, largely due to line. Personnel cost, we were slightly higher on the water fund, but slightly lower on the sewer fund. And then we also had some contract for materials that decreased, but again, this was largely due to the electricity payments that we did not make in first quarter 2025, but we figured this will pick up as we move to the second quarter of 2025. Our capital expenditures, again, those were up, but that was due to us waiting to hold off first quarter 2024 to make that movement, but we returned back to normal in 2025, so that's why you see that difference. And for both the water and the sewer fund, we did not utilize our capital cash for our first quarter.
Great, thank you for that. Commissioners, any questions?
No, thank you.
I just have one. What's a thought? Is there any way to break out those revenue generating activities like the lime or the natural gas? I'd like to see those
Okay,
in the report.
so moving forward in the next report, you'd like to see the
Yes,
line
ma'am.
jobs? Okay.
I mean, you're not telling a story. It's a good story to tell, and you should tell that.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Well, as Ms. Kinney prepares to take her seat, I will call up our airport personnel. You, Gil, or? Okay, very good.
And they're going to present I'll be looking good. Any questions?
I just have to click it along the side, right?
That's interesting.
Oh, okay. You're just gonna have to- a little bit if you want.
I'll kick it off with the first bullet. I'm Gil Turner, Director of Aviation. Thank you all for listening to us. We ended the first quarter with about 148,000 enplanements, which is about 1.9% increase for the year. So just to give you an idea of how the number of airlines we have, with 4 airlines, we've got to put them in a pie chart. American Airlines represent about 50% of our traffic, Delta, United, roughly about 20% each, then Allegiant, about 10%. So that's how it kind of, the picture of our airlines. So now I'll let Anna Stamper, who's our Division Manager of Finance, go over the numbers.
All right, so we'll start with operating revenue. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, forgot to say good evening. Good evening, commission members. I'm Anna Stamper, I'm the Division Manager of Accounting and Finance at the airport. We'll start with operating revenue trends. So for operating revenue trends, we're up about 856,000, which is 4.3% compared to the same time last year. Airline revenue is down 94,000 or 4.3%, and that's because of the annual settlement, which we'll talk about in a future slide. And then non-airline revenue is up about 970,000 or 20.4%. And that's due to rental cars, concessions, and parking. And I forgot to change the slide. I'm so sorry. Change the slide. Okay, so we'll talk about the components of airline revenue. So I mentioned the annual settlement. As you can see on this slide in the gray, it's a hit of about $92,000. The settlement is actually truing up 2023. We've settled 2024 in 2026, so we do it on a 2-year basis. So every 2 years, or I'm not every 2 years, but we're always 2 years behind.
And the reason for that is because of the audit. The audit takes, the city does an audit for 2023 a year later, so we have to make sure till the audit's done, then we true up with the airlines.
If you're wondering how the settlement works, what we do is we estimate our airline operating costs and then we boil it down to our rates. And then at the end of the year, if we do better, we pay some of that money back to the airlines. And if we do worse, we charge that money from the airlines, basically. So that's about how the settlement all works. It's a, what do we call it, residual model?
Yeah.
Residual model, yep.
Yeah, just for the airfield side.
Change the slide. Okay, for non-airline revenue, we have about $970,000 or 20.4%. Parking revenue was up about $441,000 or 21.8%, and that's because of increased rates and also greater usage. Rental car revenue is up about $832,000 because we've kind of been going after settle-ups with the rental car companies that haven't paid. So some of these were from 2022. This is not something we expect to happen every year, but we have collected on a number of settlements that were due. Concessions are up about 57,000, and that's due to higher sales. Since we've been more fully staffed, we can keep the restaurants and the concession places open longer, and that leads to higher sales. And then property taxes are down about 500,000. That's because we haven't collected for the first half of the year. That's because we're redoing how we bill all our property taxes, so it's more accurate. We've got new people to bill with SNC and Joby, Sierra Nevada Corporation and Joby. They're new tenants, so we have to really redo and rethink exactly how we're going to bill our property taxes. So this should be resolved by Q2.
Yeah, and also we got some issues out at the South Airport where we're building a lot of new hangars down there at the South Airport. Now, the Connor building, they reassessed that building and the taxes have gone up quite a bit. We're in the process of building 3 hangars under construction as we speak right now. So a lot of changes are going on with the property taxes down there. So we've got to redefine how we do that and how we build those tenants.
And the last thing is ground leases, which are up about $131,000 or 26%. And that's because of, as I mentioned, the new businesses like Joby and Sierra Nevada. They came on, I believe, in late February of last year, so that affected Q1. And then moving over to the expense side, personnel is up about $322,000 or 11.9%. Wages are up about $238,000 or 14.5%. Again, as I mentioned, we're more fully staffed and we acquired the garage. We took on about 3 full-time positions for the garage. We also filled 2 cleaners, 2 equipment operators, 2 workers in training, and 1 environmental scientist. So we are definitely more fully staffed. Overtime is down about $23,000 or 14.5% because of being more fully staffed and assigning less overtime. And insurance and fringes are both up slightly, and that's again due to the increased staffing. Moving over to contracts and materials, total expenses have actually decreased about $14,000 or 0.3%. This is due to maintenance, management contracts, offset by marketing and taxes. Maintenance is down $339,000 or 32.2%. Because we had more maintenance projects planned last year because we knew we were getting that grant money. So we planned a lot more maintenance projects last year. Management contracts are down $166,000 or 35.8%, due to the timing of payments to SP Plus, which is our parking vendor. Then taxes are up $232,000, as mentioned before, because of the new construction that happened at the Dayton Wright Brothers Airport. We will be billing all that back. Can I get else doesn't want to move? There we go. All right. Here's our year-to-date employment trend. We're up about 2,700 flights, or 1.9% compared to this time last year. Oh, employments, I'm sorry, not flights. Got ahead of myself. We're actually down some passengers for American, but we're making it up in Delta and United.
And we think the area, I know the mayor talked about the effects of what's happening in the government. We are seeing a decrease, particularly in the area of DC and to Dallas, government travel. So that is, we're seeing that right now is a 2% decrease as far as American Airlines. So, but overall, we're still not seeing the big increases that the airlines are stating that seeing nationwide. But in Dayton, we're seeing about 2%. We've seen about 2% decrease.
All right, in summary, we talked about how total sources were $694,000 compared to 2024 year to date. That's because of the non-airline revenue. As mentioned, the parking revenue is up and the rental car settle-ups. We talked about uses being up 1.8 million, personnel because of being more fully staffed. We talked about contracts and material is down due to lower maintenance. And then there's the transfer from operating to capital, which is really the big thing going on here. It's 1.4 million. It only happens once a year, and it's just transferring over so we have that money for capital projects. So we expect that will That will not be an ongoing thing. It will not happen again this year.
Yeah. And for the capital projects that we're doing this year, that $1.4 million is going to turn into $9 million of capital projects. We just signed off on the grants of the FAA. We're going to spend about $2 million on tax-weight whiskeys where Sierra Nevada's ramp is right now. So we're going to invest in upgrading that ramp because we had basically abandoned that area since when Emory left. And now that Sierra Nevada is active over there, we're starting to reactivate that taxiway whiskey. We're going to replace several jet bridges at the airport. Right now, we've already got 4 of them on contract, and we're going to get 2 more, so a total of 6 that we're going to be replacing. Those jet bridges are about 20 years old, so this is about time to replace them. That's about a $6 million project. So we're going to replace a lot of the signage on the airfield for the pilots for guidance on the airfield. So that's another $2 million investment. Also down at the South Airport, as I mentioned, there are several hangars under construction as we speak. There needs to be a service road for them to access those hangars. So we're going to invest another $1 million in building a roadway down there so the tenants can access those hangars. So that's about $9 million that this $1.4 million is going to allow us to access.
Very good. Thank you.
And one more thing, too, I want to tell you, I know you guys get this question all the time. When are the escalators going to be done? So the escalators have been a problem at the airport, and so we spent $2 million to upgrade those escalators. So the contractor is telling us now that they're going to be done May the 15th. So anybody asks you, May the 15th is the date that we were told that those escalators will be completed. So.
We're going to say mid-May.
All right. Progress. Questions?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Just one question. On chart page 6, the rental car concession revenue is settle up. Could you elaborate a little bit on that lapse? Was it just due to timing and payment or billing weather, or what was the?
It was billing. At one point in time, they were paying, when we went through the pandemic, and they were paying them, they stopped paying the mag, they started back paying the mags, and then there was some issues with how much they should be paying. So we looked at our records and they hadn't paid it all in accordance with the agreement. So we went back and start billing, and they finally settled up with us this first quarter. So that's what this is about.
Okay.
So going back, not just from 24, we went all the way back to 23, right?
2022.
22. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
so this is well overdue.
Okay.
Payments.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Filter?
I think I saw in the news that we're getting a bigger plane to the flight out to Denver, so congratulations on that.
Yes, that's good. More capacity is what we want, you know.
Which airline's that?
United.
I had a question now. Questions. Oh, I know. At one time, I thought I saw a master plan where the terminals get kind of reconfigured, where we'll go up to the second floor, kind of at the center part, and then out to the terminals. Is that still in works? And if so,
Plan is still there, sir, but we got to wait till our finances, till our employments go back up to create more revenue. Once we get more revenue, we can take out more debt. That's a really extensive project. We're talking about
right?
probably $45 to $50 million. Right now, I don't want to take out any more debt. Right now, we're competing, you know, so I don't want to raise the cost to the airlines because that would definitely go to the rate base.
Sure.
We want to do that just yet. So we get more employments. As that increases, then we'll look at dusting that plan off and activate it.
Thank you.
Great. My only question is back to Commissioner Turner-Sloss's question about the rental cars. So you said settle ups, not settlements. So in other words, you didn't, they just paid up.
Yeah.
True ups. Yeah, you didn't have to. Make an agreement. Right. That's what I thought. So, all right, that's it.
All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you all.
That's all I think we have for today.
Thank you.
Got a whole hour, 40-something minutes, so
All right.
thank you.